This is Mrs. Hedden. This is Physics R. I'm afraid I could not be here today because yesterday my youngest son got married, and I have a lot of out-of-town guests and people that I have to take care of. So I will be in tomorrow, but not today, alas, although the marriage was a good thing. Your most excellent substitute should have given you a class expectations sheet, a lab safety sheet, and a signature sheet, as well as seating you in a seating chart. The signature sheet is due on Wednesday and it's worth 5 out of 5 points. If you turn in tomorrow, Tuesday, you will get extra credit. It's a one-time deal. You'll get 10 out of 5 points, which will give you a 200% in the class at the end of the week, which is a good thing to have. That signature sheet requires your signature saying that you've read the class expectations and you've read the lab safety. It also requires your parent or guardian signature saying they've read the class expectations and they've read the lab safety. In addition, you're going to have a pre-test tomorrow on Tuesday. You'll need a calculator to do that, as well as a pencil. The point value will be adjusted, but it will be worth points. In general, people score around 30 to 40% on this pre-test during the first week of school. You'll have a 2-part pre-test, but we're only going to have 1 part tomorrow. So if you do within a reasonable expectation, as in between 30 and 40%, you should get close to 80 to 100% on the test, as I score the points for the first week of school. Take a quick look at that class expectations sheet. The first thing that you note is supplies. You're going to need a calculator. It does not have to be a graphing calculator. It must be capable of doing sines, cosines, and inverse sines, as well as, of course, addition, multiplication, and powers, and that sort of thing. You need some kind of notebook or binder for taking, keeping, and organizing your notes and papers. Whatever system has worked for you should work well in the class, except for sticking papers in your textbook. So don't count on that one. One of the big reasons you shouldn't count on that is because we aren't going to be handing out a textbook. I tend to use the Physics Classroom website, which is based on Conceptual Physics by Paul Hewitt, which is the classroom textbook that we will use. I know it says Conceptual Physics, but this is Physics R, not Conceptual. We do have a classroom set of hardcover textbooks available for use in school, but most assigned reading will be from the website, which means you need to access the website, which means you should have access to the internet. If you don't have access to the internet at home, you're going to find that you're going to have to find a location to do your homework that does have internet. So you will be doing stuff on the internet besides just reading the physics classroom. You're going to need a school-issued Chromebook and some kind of email address. Your school Google email is fine. Classroom structure, we have homework and classwork. Your homework will entail watching lectures on the internet. I flip partially, so I have pre-lab videos that you need to watch, as well as a few complex problem-solving videos that you'll need to watch. You'll be completing Minds on Physics modules, and if you don't know what Minds on Physics is, you will. If you have anybody in your family or friend who's taken physics before, just ask them. They'll tell you. You'll be doing Moodle quizzes, and you'll be completing lab write-ups at home. You'll be reading material and taking notes on it and handing that in. And we'll have the infamous quarter projects. Even though we no longer have quarters, we tend to organize it as a quarter project because that represents when we tend to do these things. The first one is usually homecoming week. The second one is usually 2 weeks before Christmas break or winter break. And the third one is usually before spring break, but not always. It's sometime in the second semester. For classwork, I generally have fairly short lectures, except for the first week. The first week tends to have long lectures because we have to get through a lot of introductory stuff. I have demonstrations. I tend to use outside videos covering some new topics or reviewing or having demonstrations that I can't do in the classroom. And I also review common problems that you're having with either Minds on Physics or problem solving. So working a problem is a type of a lecture. We do a lot of group and individual problem solving and lab work. So we do a lot of group work as well as individual work. We tend to work on Minds on Physics modules a little bit in the class and Moodle quizzes a little bit in the class. Of course, there's always the fun reading and SAT related activities as well as chapter tests. Grading policy, I have a weighted grading system. That means 48% of your grade is based on your tests, including that pre-test that you're having tomorrow, which again will have an adjusted score. 24% of your final grade is based on labs, 8% on other work, and of course 20% is based on the semester final. And after all that weighting, I have the standard grading form where 90 or above is an A, 80 to 90 is a B, 70 to 80 is a C, 60 to 70 is a D, and below that is not good. Class communication. I do use the online learning environment. I tend to oscillate between Haiku and Moodle. So it kind of depends on what I'm doing. All the assignments will be noted on the Google Calendar. The Google Calendar, I've given you a public address, so I've made that calendar public. So if you wish to, you can embed it somewhere or you can just make a bookmark of it. But I've always updated it to Haiku and LTHS Moodle. So you can always look on Haiku, and the calendar's there, as well as LTHS Moodle, and the calendar is there. The calendar on WebAssign you're not using, so don't worry about that. I'll be using Remind to send out text announcements to the class for any last-minute changes, reminders, and various important communications. Assignments will include Minds on Physics, Moodle, and Haiku. You're going to need to access these websites on a regular basis to do homeworks, labs, quizzes, and tests. Activities done on these websites will be graded, and many can only be accessed via the website. So you need to have access to the internet. My conference and planning period this year is 5. I tutor in the Media Center on 3B, and I'm usually available for quick questions after school until about 3:20. My email is listed. Do not use the Moodle email. I only check one email location, but it is appropriate to email with questions and information. For questions and information, usually I respond fairly quickly, but it might not be for 24 hours. I don't always look at it, my email, at 8:30, 9:30, 10:30 at night, and that becomes important when we're working on projects. Because when we work on projects, a lot of people send emails at the last minute. My work phone is noted. The phone does not ring during school hours, and you must leave a message, which is usually not the best way to get a hold of me, but you certainly can give that a shot. Online help is at the physics classroom, and we'll have more places to look for help later in the year. There are 3-quarter projects that need to be done at home. They will be counted as a lab grade. The projects can be done in groups of 1 to 2 students. You can select to work with any student in any of my classes. First quarter project is the King of the Hill competition, following my rules. Second quarter project is wooden bridges, following the IIT bridge rules. And the third quarter project is a Rube Goldberg initiated mousetrap car. And we'll have more on those later on when we introduce the topics and assign them. The class rules. On-task behavior is critical for the success of the teaching style that I have. If your student's behavior or your behavior is distraction to others, disrespectful, inappropriate for school, or unsafe, disciplinary steps will be taken. In general, the initial step is to remove a student from group work for that day. If the situation warrants, exclusion for group work will be long-term. In some cases, if there is enough of a problem, group work for the entire class will be suspended. So I really like students working together in groups, but if it's not going to work, we're not going to do it. During labs, the expectation is that you are working with your lab group only. As with group work, if you are not, the initial step is to remove the student from the lab for the day. If the situation warrants, exclusion from lab work will be long-term. In some cases, if there is enough of a problem, lab work for the entire class will be suspended. If behavior creates an unsafe condition or is constantly repeated, then dean and parent-guardian notification will occur with the possibility of removal from the class. It's rare that occurs in physics R. Generally speaking, it's mainly a situation where you're excluded from the lab for the day. The other way to get excluded from the lab for the day is if pre-lab work is not completed, or if it appears you have an incomplete knowledge of the assignment. So you might have completed the work, but can't really tell me what the lab is about. Or you might have completed the work and not done it successfully, like got a 60% on it. If that occurs, you will not be allowed to do the lab in class, and you will have to do or redo the assignment, the pre-lab assignment. Demonstrate understanding of the lab, and then come in on the assigned day before school to do the lab. If you're unable to come in on the assigned day, you will take a 0 on that portion of the lab. All school rules apply, and then this is school rules for late work. The big thing with the makeup labs, they will require you to come in before school. If you have other commitments, you receive a 0 on that portion of the lab. Extra credit. I participate in the Right to Read program. You may submit 2 books per semester. I do not give any extra credit during the last 2 weeks of each semester, nor will I accept 2 books within 2 weeks of each other. Going on to the safety sheet. Basically, safety is just common sense. If there's something that you're thinking that you're not sure if you should be able to do it, you probably shouldn't. That would be like horseplay, using meter sticks as swords, trying to electrocute your lab partner, things of that nature. That's it. So I expect you to have common sense and to behave appropriately in the lab. Now, there's a whole list of lab rules there for the physics laboratory. I'm sure you can look over them and read them. Physics, the first semester we learn about kinematics, which is a study of motion, and we look at linear motion, which is basically constant accelerated. We'll look at some two-dimensional motion and use vectors, and we'll look at forces and their effect on motions. Second semester we cover a lot of different topics. So second semester, while it's not hard, it's tough because there's just a lot of variation in the topics. Momentum and energy are really just an extension of kinematics, so those aren't too bad. Then we'll look at gravity a little bit, and look at a little bit at black holes and situations that occur when you have very intense gravity situations, as well as normal gravity situations. Normal meaning that you go to a different planet, which actually isn't that normal. Then we'll look at waves. Within waves, we'll look at sound waves as well as light waves. And then we conclude the year by looking at electrical fields. And that's the end of my first day lecture. Thank you very much for your time.